My roommate caught me watching gay videos. What he did next changed everything. The rain had been falling since late afternoon, a soft, steady tapping against the windows that made the apartment feel smaller, more enclosed. Our place always felt like that when it rained. 2 bedrooms, a narrow hallway, the living room light casting long shadows that stretched and blurred as the sky darkened. I liked those evenings. They gave me permission to slow down, to exist quietly without explaining myself to anyone. My roommate, Adam, had gone out earlier. He said something about meeting friends, maybe a late dinner. He didn't look back when he closed the door, just gave me that usual half smile that lived somewhere between polite and distant. Adam was like that, present but unreadable. We'd been living together for 8 months, long enough to know each other's routines, not long enough to ask the questions that actually mattered. I curled up on my bed with my laptop, the glow of the screen the only real light in the room. Outside, thunder rolled faintly, like a warning whispered too far away to be taken seriously. I told myself I was just going to distract my mind for a bit. Just noise. Just something to drown out the thoughts I'd been carrying around like contraband. I hesitated before clicking play. My heart thudded as if I were doing something illegal, even though I was alone. The volume stayed low. The door was locked. Still, my shoulders stayed tense, my ears alert for any sound that didn't belong to the rain. Watching those videos was a secret I never spoke aloud, not even in my own head. Naming it made it real. Dangerous. I kept glancing at the clock. Adam wasn't supposed to be back for hours. At least, that's what I thought. The apartment heater kicked on suddenly, rattling the vent. I flinched. My pulse spiked, then slowly settled. Relax, I told myself. You're imagining things. But the sense of being watched crept in anyway, crawling up my spine. That's when I heard it. The front door, not opening fully, just the soft click of the lock turning. So quiet it almost blended with the rain. My breath caught in my throat. My mind raced through possibilities. Maybe he forgot something. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. I froze, the screen still glowing in front of me, casting light across my hands, my face, the truth I'd been pretending didn't exist. I should have closed the laptop. I should have done anything. Instead, I sat there, suspended in a moment that felt stretched thin, ready to snap. Adam's shadow passed under my door. He stopped. I stared at the door handle, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. The air felt heavy, charged, like the second before lightning strikes. My mind screamed questions I didn't want answered. Had he seen the light? Heard something? Known all along? The handle twitched, and in that instant, with my secret laid bare on the other side of a thin wooden door, I realized one thing with terrifying clarity. Whatever happened next, nothing between us would ever be the same. The next morning arrived quietly, almost mockingly normal. Sunlight slipped through the blinds in thin, pale lines, landing across the cluttered desk and the foot of my bed. The rain was gone, replaced by a dull gray sky that made the apartment feel washed out, like someone had turned the saturation down on everything, including me. I lay there longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over again. The handle twitching, the shadow under the door, the silence after. Nothing had happened. Not really. Adam hadn't knocked. He hadn't come in. Eventually, his footsteps moved away, down the hall, into his room. A door closed. End of story. Except it wasn't. I listened carefully now, straining for sounds that would tell me where he was. The apartment had its own language, pipes knocking softly, the fridge humming, the faint creak of floorboards when someone shifted their weight. This morning, Adam's room was quiet. Too quiet. No music, no shower, no sign of life. That unsettled me more than anything else. Normally, Adam was predictable. Alarm at 7, shower, coffee. He'd hum sometimes, not even realizing he was doing it. I used to find comfort in that routine. This morning, it was gone, and the absence felt intentional. I finally got up, my movements slow, cautious, like I was navigating unfamiliar territory. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, avoided my own reflection for longer than I'd like to admit. My thoughts kept spiraling back to one question I couldn't answer. Did he see? In the kitchen, I poured myself coffee I barely tasted. Adam's mug sat in the sink, unwashed, a faint ring of dried coffee at the bottom. That meant he'd been up. That meant he'd chosen not to say anything. The silence was loud. I took my cup to the couch and sat there, staring at nothing. Every possible version of last night played out in my head. Maybe he'd caught a glimpse through the crack under the door. Maybe he'd heard something. Maybe he'd known for months and this was just confirmation. Adam wasn't stupid. And he wasn't blind. We met almost a year ago, two strangers answering the same online listing. He was calm, confident in a way that didn't need to announce itself. Tall, broad shoulders, the kind of presence that filled a room without trying. He talked about his job, his gym routine, his friends. I talked about safe things, neutral things, things that didn't give me away. Living together blurred lines I hadn't meant to blur. Late night conversations, shared meals, the way he'd walk around the apartment shirtless without thinking twice. The way my body reacted when it shouldn't have. I told myself it was nothing. Just proximity, just imagination. Lies are easier when you repeat them often enough. By late morning, I couldn't take it anymore. The waiting, the guessing. I needed something to break the tension, even if it made things worse. I knocked on his door. No answer. I hesitated, then knocked again, louder this time. Adam. Still nothing. A strange chill crept over me. He hadn't mentioned taking the day off. His shoes were still by the door. His jacket hung on the hook. Wherever he was, he hadn't gone far. I turned the handle slowly. His door was unlocked. The room was empty. The bed was made, not neatly, but not abandoned either. His phone charger was plugged in, the cable coiled loosely on the nightstand, no phone attached. That was odd. Adam never went anywhere without his phone. Ever. My chest tightened. I stepped back, suddenly feeling like I'd crossed a line. Like I wasn't supposed to see this. Like the apartment itself was holding its breath. I spent the rest of the day trying to distract myself. Laundry, emails, cleaning surfaces that were already clean. Anything to keep my mind from spiraling. But every sound made me jump. Every passing hour without Adam's return added weight to the unease settling in my gut. By evening, the sky darkened again, clouds rolling in like a bad omen repeating itself. When the front door finally opened, I nearly dropped the plate I was holding. Adam walked in slowly, eyes tired, jaw tight. He looked different. Not angry, not calm, something in between. He didn't meet my gaze at first, just set his keys down with deliberate care. "Hey," I said, my voice coming out thinner than I intended. "Hey." One word. Flat. He moved past me toward the kitchen, close enough that I caught the familiar scent of his cologne. My pulse betrayed me instantly. I hated that about myself. "You didn't go to work," I said, immediately regretting it. Too personal. Too obvious. He paused, then shrugged. "Needed a day. That was all." He opened the fridge, stared inside like he wasn't really seeing it. I stood there, heart pounding, feeling like we were circling something sharp and dangerous. "Say something," I told myself. "Say anything." But the words stuck. Adam closed the fridge and finally looked at me. Really looked at me. His eyes held something unreadable, curiosity, maybe. Or recognition. My stomach twisted. "You okay?" he asked. The irony almost made me laugh. "Yeah." I lied. "Just tired." A pause stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. His gaze flicked briefly down the hallway. Toward my room. There it was. The confirmation I hadn't wanted. "I heard you last night," he said quietly. My breath caught. "Heard me." He nodded once. Door was closed. Sound travels. The room felt smaller again, just like it had during the storm. My face burned, shame flooding through me in a way that felt physical. I opened my mouth to apologize, to deny, to explain, anything, but he raised a hand slightly. "I'm not mad," he said. "Just surprised." Surprised was worse. Surprised meant it mattered. "I didn't mean for you to." I stopped, swallowing hard. "I didn't think you were home." "I know." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Defensive. Guarded. "I came back early." Another pause. I didn't mean to listen, he added. But I did. Silence wrapped around us again, heavier this time. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, my thoughts racing. Every fear I'd buried clawed its way to the surface. Say it, a voice in my head urged. Or lose the chance forever. There's something you should know, I said, barely above a whisper. Adam's eyes didn't leave mine. I figured. That wasn't the reaction I expected. You did, he nodded slowly. I'm not oblivious. The way you look at me sometimes. The way you go quiet when certain topics come up. A faint, humorless smile touched his lips. I just didn't want to be wrong. My chest felt tight, like there wasn't enough air in the room. And now? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer. Not invading my space, just enough to change the air between us. Now, he said carefully, I don't know what this means. Neither did I. But standing there, caught between confession and consequence, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever line we'd been skirting for months had finally been crossed. And whether it led to something dangerous, or something inevitable, was a question neither of us was ready to answer. The air between us didn't snap. It thickened. Adam didn't move away. He didn't move closer either. He just stood there, shoulders tense, jaw set, like he was bracing for impact. I could hear the refrigerator hum behind him, the clock ticking somewhere down the hall. Every sound felt amplified, like the apartment itself was listening. I don't know what you expect me to say, he said finally. I'm not expecting anything, I replied too quickly. A lie. I was expecting everything. Rejection, anger, mockery, relief. I didn't know which one scared me most. He studied my face, eyes narrowing slightly, not in suspicion but concentration. You look like you're about to bolt. I might, I admitted. My palms were damp. My heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. This is a lot. For both of us, he said. He pushed off the counter and walked past me, heading toward the living room. I followed without thinking, stopping near the couch while he paced slowly, dragging a hand through his hair. He did that when he was overwhelmed. I'd seen it before, after bad phone calls, stressful days. This felt worse. I grew up in a house where stuff like this wasn't talked about, he said, staring out the window. So when I heard you last night, it messed with my head. My stomach twisted. I'm sorry. He turned sharply. I didn't say that to make you feel guilty. Silence again. He exhaled. I don't like not understanding things. And right now, I don't understand us. The word hit harder than I expected. Us. It implied something that had never been acknowledged, only felt in stolen glances and half-finished thoughts. There is no us, I said automatically. Safer that way. Adam's gaze lingered on me, steady and unsettling. Isn't there? I looked away. That was answer enough. He crossed the room then, stopping a few feet from me. Close enough that I could see the faint crease between his eyebrows, the way his chest rose and fell with each controlled breath. Last night, he said slowly, I stood outside your door for a long time. My breath caught. Why? I don't know. His voice dropped. Curiosity. Confusion. Maybe because part of me wanted to knock. The room tilted. Why didn't you? I asked. His jaw tightened. Because I wasn't sure what would happen if I did. Neither was I. The distance between us felt deliberate now, charged with everything we weren't saying. My mind screamed at me to step back, to laugh it off, to restore the balance we'd lived in for months. Instead, my feet stayed rooted to the floor. This changes things, I said quietly. Yes, he agreed. That's what scares me. I swallowed hard. You don't have to deal with this. I can move out. The words tasted bitter, but they felt necessary. A way out. A way to make the tension stop. Adam's eyes flashed. Is that what you want? No. The answer came too fast. Too honest. He stared at me, something unreadable flickering across his face. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed softly, not amused, not cruel. Just tired. You're terrible at lying, he said. So are you, I shot back. That earned a small smile. It faded quickly. I've been thinking about you more than I should, he admitted, voice low. Not in a way that made sense to me. I kept telling myself it was just familiarity. Just proximity. My chest tightened painfully. Those were my excuses too. And last night, I asked. His eyes dropped for a split second before lifting again. Last night made it harder to pretend. The silence that followed felt different. Less guarded. More dangerous. I took a step closer before I could stop myself. Adam didn't retreat. The space between us narrowed until I could feel the heat of him, the tension coiling like a live wire. "This is a bad idea," I whispered. He nodded. Probably. Neither of us moved. I could feel my pulse in my throat, my ears. Every instinct told me to run, yet something deeper, something I'd ignored for too long, held me there. Adam lifted his hand, stopping just short of touching me. His fingers hovered near my arm, trembling slightly. "Tell me to stop," he said. The words echoed in my head. Tell him to stop. It would have been easy. One word, one boundary. Instead, I said nothing. His fingers brushed my arm, barely there, like he was testing the reality of it. Electricity shot through me, my breath hitching despite myself. Adam sucked in a sharp breath. Jesus. That was all it took. He dropped his hand as if burned, stepping back abruptly. No, we shouldn't. The sudden absence of his touch felt like a loss. My chest ached. "You're right," I said, though my voice shook. "This is crossing a line." He paced again, restless. "I don't want to hurt you. Or screw up what we have." "What we have is already screwed up," I replied softly. He stopped, turning to face me. "Is it?" I met his gaze, every wall I'd built cracking under the weight of the moment. "I don't know how to live in this in-between anymore." Neither did he. Adam walked back toward me, slower this time, more deliberate. He stopped inches away, searching my face as if looking for permission he didn't want to ask for out loud. "If we do this," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "there's no pretending after." My heart pounded. I know. Another pause. A final chance to pull away. Instead, Adam leaned in. He didn't kiss me right away. His forehead rested against mine, breath warm, uneven. The intimacy of that small contact felt overwhelming, like standing on the edge of something irreversible. "Last chance," he murmured. I closed my eyes. Then I nodded. When his lips finally met mine, it wasn't rushed or rough. It was hesitant, almost fragile, as if we were both afraid the moment might shatter if handled carelessly. The world narrowed to that single point of contact, the weight of months of unspoken tension collapsing into something terrifyingly real. And just as quickly as it began, he pulled back. We stared at each other, breathless, stunned by what we'd done. "This," Adam said hoarsely, "this changes everything." I knew he was right. The kiss hadn't answered any questions. It had only created more. The apartment didn't feel the same after that. Adam stepped back first, dragging a hand down his face like he was trying to wake himself up from a dream. His breathing was uneven. Mine wasn't much better. We stood there, separated now by a few feet that felt wider than the hallway, both of us staring at the space where something had just happened, and might happen again. Neither of us spoke. The silence was different from before. Not awkward, not empty. It was heavy, saturated with meaning, with the echo of what his lips had felt like against mine. I could still feel it, faint but unmistakable, like a bruise forming under the surface. "I need a minute," Adam said finally. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what that meant. A minute alone, a minute to think, a minute before everything collapsed. He disappeared into his room, closing the door gently behind him. The click of the latch sounded final in a way that made my chest tighten. I sank onto the couch, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor. My hands were shaking now that the adrenaline had nowhere to go. I pressed them together, grounding myself in the pressure. What did we just do? The question looped endlessly, but no answer stuck. Minutes passed. Maybe more. Time felt slippery, unreliable. I noticed small things I'd ignored before, the faint scuff on the coffee table, the hum of the ceiling fan, the way the light shifted as the sun dipped lower. Ordinary details in an apartment that suddenly felt like the site of something dangerous. My phone buzzed. A text from Adam. I didn't mean for that to happen. I stared at the words, my throat tight. "Neither did I typed back. Then erased it, rewrote it. But it did. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. That's what scares me, he sent. I leaned back, closing my eyes. Fear was the right word. Not because the kiss had been wrong, but because it hadn't been. Adam came out of his room a while later, calmer on the surface, guarded again. He grabbed a glass of water, drank it slowly, like he needed the time to steady himself. He didn't look at me at first. We should probably talk about boundaries, he said. The word landed harder than I expected. Okay, I replied. He nodded, as if confirming something to himself. We live together. That doesn't change overnight. No, I said. It doesn't. But we both knew something already had. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, a deliberate choice. Our knees didn't touch. Our shoulders didn't brush. The distance felt forced, artificial, like pretending the floor wasn't cracked beneath us. I don't regret it, Adam said quietly. That's the problem. I turned to look at him. His eyes were fixed on the wall, jaw tense, fingers laced together so tightly his knuckles were pale. I don't either, I admitted. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath all along. That doesn't mean we know what it means, he added. No, I said. It doesn't. Night crept in gradually, shadows pulling in corners of the room. Neither of us turned on the lights. It felt easier to talk in the half-dark, where expressions blurred and vulnerability felt slightly safer. Adam stood eventually, stretching like he'd been sitting too long. I'm going to take a walk. Now. The word slipped out before I could stop it. He glanced at me, something unreadable in his expression. Yeah, I need air. I nodded. Okay. At the door, he hesitated. His hand rested on the knob longer than necessary. For a moment, I thought he might turn around, say something reckless, close the distance again. He didn't. The door closed behind him, leaving the apartment impossibly quiet. I sat there long after, listening for his return, my thoughts tangled in guilt and longing and fear. Every scenario played out differently in my head. Us pretending nothing happened. Us crossing lines we couldn't uncross. One of us leaving. When Adam finally came back, it was late. I was still awake. He didn't say anything, just paused in the doorway, looking at me like he wanted to speak but didn't trust himself to. Then he went to his room. His door stayed open this time. I stared down the hallway, heart pounding, aware of how thin the walls were. How close he was. How unfinished everything felt. I didn't move, but I didn't sleep either. Because somewhere between the kiss we couldn't take back and the silence we were now sharing, one question refused to leave me alone. Had we already crossed the point of no return, or were we still pretending there was a way back? The days that followed blurred together in a way that made time feel dishonest. On the surface, everything went back to normal. We cooked separately but ate at the same table. We talked about groceries, bills, work, safe topics, neutral ground. Adam laughed at a joke on his phone one evening, and the sound startled me more than it should have. It reminded me how easily things could feel normal, if we were better at lying to ourselves. But something fundamental had shifted. I felt it in the way he avoided standing too close in the kitchen. In how he never walked around shirtless anymore. In the careful way he knocked on my door now, even when he didn't need permission. Every boundary he respected felt like a quiet acknowledgement of what we weren't addressing. At night, I listened to him move around his room. The creak of his bed. The soft click of his lamp turning off. Ordinary sounds that now carried too much meaning. I wondered if he was lying awake too, staring at the ceiling, replaying the same moment I couldn't stop revisiting. That kiss. Not the physical act of it, but what it implied. Once, I caught him watching me from across the room. It lasted only a second, but it was enough. His expression wasn't guarded then. It was raw, unfiltered, and when our eyes met, he looked away like he'd been burned. I wanted to say something. Anything. But fear kept me silent. What if I named it and he pulled away completely? What if I stayed quiet and he slipped out of reach anyway? The tension became its own presence, living with us, breathing between us. Friends noticed. Asked if we were fighting. We both laughed it off, too quickly, too rehearsed. One evening, I came home late and found Adam sitting on the couch in the dark. The TV was off. His phone lay untouched on the table. You okay? I asked. He looked up slowly. Yeah. Just thinking. I waited. He didn't continue. I sat down, leaving space between us that felt intentional and unbearable at the same time. My heart pounded, every nerve alert, waiting for him to say the thing I was too afraid to say myself. He didn't. Instead, he stood. I'm turning in. As he walked past me, his arm brushed mine, accidental, fleeting, but the contact sent a jolt through me so sharp I sucked in a breath. He paused. So did I. For a moment, neither of us moved. The air felt thick again, charged with everything unresolved, everything unspoken. I could almost feel him debating something, his body tense, his breath shallow. Then he stepped away. The sound of his door closing echoed down the hall, louder than it should have been. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, a familiar ache settling in my chest. I realized then that the hardest part wasn't the uncertainty. It was the restraint. We were choosing, every day, not to cross a line we both felt pulling us closer. Choosing distance over honesty, safety over truth. But choices like that have a shelf life. As I drifted towards sleep, one thought refused to let me rest, sharp, insistent, impossible to ignore. Sooner or later, one of us was going to break. And when that happened, I didn't know if what followed would finally bring clarity or destroy the fragile balance we were still pretending to have. The apartment had its own rhythm, and I had learned it well. Morning light crept in through the thin curtains, pale and hesitant, illuminating dust particles that floated like they had nowhere urgent to be. The ceiling fan clicked softly as it turned, a familiar, almost comforting sound. Outside, the city was waking up, distant traffic, a vendor calling out, the low hum of life continuing whether I was ready for it or not. I liked mornings like this. Quiet, predictable. Adam was still asleep. At least, I assumed he was. His door was closed, the hallway empty, the air carrying the faint scent of coffee grounds from the night before. We'd fallen into an easy routine over the past several months, shared rent, shared space, separate lives. Or so I told myself. I moved carefully, as if noise itself could betray me. In the kitchen, I poured water into the kettle and leaned against the counter while it heated. My thoughts wandered where I tried not to let them go. To the way Adam laughed without restraint. To the way he stood too close sometimes without seeming to notice. To the quiet tension I felt whenever our eyes met for longer than necessary. You're reading into it, I told myself. I told myself that a lot. Adam was my roommate. Straight. Off limits. Safe. The kettle whistled sharply, making me jump. My heart raced for no reason I could justify. I turned it off quickly, glancing down the hallway as if expecting him to be standing there, watching me. He wasn't. I exhaled, embarrassed by my own nerves. Back in my room, the door closed behind me, sealing off the rest of the apartment. This was my space, my control. I sat on the bed, laptop balanced on my thighs, staring at the blank screen longer than necessary. I knew what I wanted to do. I also knew how badly I didn't want to get caught. My finger hovered over the trackpad. A quiet thrill ran through me, part excitement, part dread. I kept the volume low, the brightness dimmed. Every small precaution felt like a confession. The video played. I barely noticed the content at first. What I noticed was my own breathing. The way my body reacted before my mind could stop it. The way shame and longing tangled together so tightly I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. A floorboard creaked. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs as I yanked one earbud out, listening. The sound came again, soft, deliberate. Not the house settling. Footsteps. Adam. I glanced at the clock. He wasn't supposed to be awake yet. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stared at the door, suddenly hyper-aware of the thin gap beneath it, the faint line of light spilling into the hallway. The footsteps stopped. Silence followed, too precise, too intentional. I held my breath, laptop still open, screen glowing like an accusation. My mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Had he heard something? Seen the light? Known all along? The door handle shifted slightly. Just enough to tell me I wasn't alone anymore. In that suspended moment, caught between exposure and escape, I realized something with terrifying clarity. Whatever happened next wasn't just about being discovered. It was about everything I'd been pretending not to want.